Bechoros Daf Lamed Hey, the Mishnah tells us two stories. There's a guy that saw an older animal with a lot of hair, and he asked, why does he have so much hair? And they told him, the halachas of Bechor, you can't shecht it unless it has a mum. So he took out a spear, and he created a mum on its ear. Chacham said, that's a good mum. It's as if it happened by itself, because the guy had no idea that his mum is going to make a heter, because if you could make a mum on purpose, then why didn't the Jews make it on purpose? He didn't know that distinction. But once he saw that you're allowed to eat this bechar, he went around and he made more mumim to all the becharis. Then they said it's awesome, because now he understood that his action is going to create a heter in the bechar, and that's awesome. The same thing happened with Jewish children that took a bunch of sheep and they tied their tails together, and the sheep tried to get away from each other, and one of the tails ripped off. That created a mum. Chacham said that the first one is a good mum, but once the children learned that that creates a mum, then they said it's asur, because anything that you understand that what you're doing creates a mum and a heter, that's asur. Rav Kanitina wanted to make a distinction between the wording that you tell the guy. The guy asks, how come this animal has so much hair? And you say, we can't shecht it unless it has a mum, that's okay. But if you say, if a blemish is made, then that creates an issur, because then he understands that he has to create the blemish, the mum. Rava says there's no distinction. At the end of the day, the guy has no reason to understand that he's allowed to make a mum and a Jew is not allowed to, and therefore it doesn't matter what lashon you use. At the end of the day, his mum is a good mum the first time. In the Mishnah it says, Zeh klal. It comes to say, a chiddush, this is the klal that if you have das, it's no good. If you don't have das, it's okay. It says the Gemara, it's coming to say this, a case of where you did a grama, you caused a dog to bite its ear by putting food on its ear, that is asur. And if you're just being masiach l'ketuma, you were talking to the guy, you were explaining to him the halachas of bechar, but you didn't intend for the guy to create the mum, and then the guy went on his own and made a mum, that's also good. If, says the Mishnah, a bechar was chasing a person, and the person out of fear kicked the animal away and created a mum, that's a mum that happened by itself, because you didn't intend on making a mum, you intended on saving yourself. What if you saw this animal the next day and you were mad at him and you kicked him? So one lashon is that it's not good because you intended to make a mum. The other lashon of Rav is that it's okay because you didn't intend to make a mum. You were just thinking about what he did to you, and at a revenge you gave him this kick, but you didn't want to make a mum. You were thinking about what he did to you yesterday. We know that a bechar becomes kadosh as the head. Rashi says the entire head comes out from the womb. So if there's no Beis Hamikdash and you create a wound, you create a mum on the animal before it comes out, that's a good. That's considered. That's okay. You weren't over anything because the animal wasn't kaddish yet. So if it's a goat and you punctured its ear, it's a good mum. And if you punctured a sheep's lips, that's also a good mum. But not if you punctured the sheep's ears. According to the second lashon, even if you punctured the sheep's ears, it's possible because sheep have very short ears. But it's possible that it came out sideways and the ear came out first, and that's how you got it. The gums, if it's the front gums that are visible, so even if they have a slit or a little mum, then that's considered a mum hanira that you could see. But if the mum is all the way in the back of the mouth, then the only time it's a mum that you can see is if when the animal opens up its mouth completely to scream, and you look inside and you can see it, then that's mum hanira. The Mishnah brings three opinions if a shepherd is believed to testify about a mum that is man-made. In other words, not a mum of, let's say, a fifth leg that a person can do, but a mum of the split lip, the split ear. The first shita, well, according to everybody, a kohen cannot testify about his own animal. That's pashut. Reb Shimon Gamliel says that a shepherd, even if he's a kohen, he's believed to testify on his employer. If he's a shepherd, he could say that his employer's animals are bali mum. Reb Meir says a kohen is never believed. Once a kohen is not believed on his own things, then he's not believed on anybody's. And the Tanakama, here's where it becomes interesting. The Tanakama, there's two shittas what the Tanakama said. Either the Tanakama said that if the shepherd is a Yisrael, then he is completely believed, because the only thing he stands to gain is that maybe his employer will invite him to a barbecue and give him a piece of meat. For that, he's not going to lie. But if the shepherd is a kohen, he has a lot to gain, because the employer will reward him first. He'll give him the entire animal. Who else will he give it? Why should he give it to another kohen if he can give it to his own shepherd? And if the owner is a kohen and he won't give him the whole animal, we're still worried for something called goimlim, that if the shepherd testifies falsely for the employer in return will testify falsely for the shepherd. According to the second lashon, it's more dependent on who the employer is. If the employer is a Yisrael, then everybody's believed. Why? Even a Kohen, because the shepherds think that the Yisrael is only going to give the animal to a Kohen Talmud Chacham. He has no reason to give it to a shepherd who's not a Talmud Chacham usually. And if the Kohen is the employer, now we have to be worried that either if a shepherd is Yisrael, he might lie in order to get a piece of the barbecue, and if the shepherd is a Kohen, he might lie to do Gaimlim to pay him back, and he'll pay him back. If a Bechor is in the hands of a Kohen, according to Rabbi Yeshua Kapisai, you need at least 2 witnesses, even Kohanim that are not related, but not somebody from his own family. According to Rabbi Yossi, even 1 aid is enough, and that's how Rava paskins. And according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who Rav Nachman paskins like this, and this is the halacha, you don't need any aidim. Even your own children, even your own daughter can testify for you, but not your wife, because ishtek gufa. And Reb Meir, of course, holds like he always holds that a kohen cannot testify on anything. Only Yisrael could testify. If there's a suffix bechor, like we spoke about in the beginning of the Masechta, that we don't know, the mother gave birth to twins, and we don't know which one came out first, so the Yisrael gets one, the kohen gets one. So according to Rabbi Yossi, when we mentioned this in the beginning of the Masechta, according to Rabbi Yossi, since the kohen owned it for a split second, and they did this trade, the kohen got one and the Yisrael got one, so this animal is patur for matnas kahuna. Now, and according to Reb Meir, you do have to give matnas kahuna. What about to testify if the mum that this Bechor suffix was done on purpose or not? So according to Rav Chizda, which is the sheet of Rav Katina, just like he said before, that 2 people from the shuk, just 2 strangers have to testify. Over here, 2 strangers have to testify. But according to Rav Nachman in Rav Meir, even the owner can testify on himself. And his proof is, because if not, Rav Meir always holds that if somebody's chashad once in any area, he can never testify. That's why all kohanim can never testify. So if a Yisrael can't testify in his own thing, then he can't testify ever, and we know that a suffix bechar you could eat. Now, we also know that Rav Meir holds that if you chashad for one thing, like we had in a sugya, that if you chashad on part of chavrus, if a person doesn't wash his hands, he can't testify on anything in the Torah. So over here, if he's saying that a kohen is chashad and he can't testify, so the kohen should always be puzzled on the entire Torah. And we know that's not true. The answer is, over here he's not chashad, there's a chashash. In other words, we're concerned. We don't know any facts. We don't know if this kohen is a liar. But kohanim in general lie about Bechor. So therefore, Rav Meir says he's not believed, but not that he's a chashad, and therefore for the rest of the Torah he is believed. Have a wonderful day.